Hi there, you're listening to the Estranged Heart podcast, and I'm your host, Kreed Revere. Welcome back to our returning listeners, and if this is your first time here, thank you for selecting this podcast to listen to. As we begin today's episode, I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and listen with an open heart. But first, the regular disclaimer. I am not a licensed therapist or counselor. Nothing within this podcast should be considered or taken as therapy. If you are in need of therapeutic support such as counseling, please seek out a therapist near you. Hi there, we're back for another episode. AC and I are answering listeners' questions. And before we dive into that, I wanted to just remind everyone the Moving Beyond Family Struggles Summit is quickly approaching. That will be October 12th through the 15th. It is free. It is online over the course of 4 days. And if you would like to register for that event, I will have the link in the show notes for this episode. So be sure and check that out. I will be speaking at the summit along with 29 other estrangement experts. So lots of valuable information, and I highly encourage everyone who listens to this podcast to attend. Again, it's free. It's online, October 12th through the 15th. Also, if you are interested in coaching with myself and AC, please drop me an email, theestrangedheart@gmail.com. I think it's a valuable resource to be able to have both of us present and available to answer your questions at the same time. So be sure and send an email if you're interested in that. Again, email's in the show notes as well. And the last announcement and reminder is that I have started a new cohort for estranged mothers and another one for recently reconciled mothers for a Zoom support group that will meet weekly on Monday evenings or late Monday afternoon, depending on where you're at in the world. And if you're interested in that, please email me at theestrangedheart@gmail.com. Happy to get the application to you and registration information. Those will start the week of October the 9th. Again, that will be via Zoom, and there will be two separate groups, one for estranged mothers and one for recently reconciled moms. So yeah, on to today's episode. So we're back with another episode, and I think this week we want to answer some listener questions. How's that sound?
That sounds wonderful.
Fantastic. All right, so let's kind of dive right on in here. The first question is, do or did either of you regret or have regrets about estrangement from your parents or mother? Are you sad about the time you missed together because of the estrangement, or was it absolutely necessary for your sanity? Would you like to start?
Yeah, I personally don't have any regrets surrounding the last and longest round of estrangement I had from my mother, mostly because I don't feel that I was the one who completely initiated it. I feel like it was more on her telling me that, like, these are the conditions under which you're allowed back in my life.
Mm.
So I don't think there was really any room for regret there. As far as the second part of that was something about feeling bad about the time that was wasted effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is something that my mother and I have spoken about at length, and she to this day still once in a while will bring up regrets and sadness about all of the years that we wasted, is how she words it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I always come back to her with is, Mom, we didn't waste those years. We spent those years. We spent reflecting. We spent them developing ourselves. We spent those years preparing for the day where hopefully we would come back together. And because we spent those years that we spent them, we were able to successfully reconnect and reconcile in a meaningful and beautiful and productive way.
Beautiful, beautiful. Um, I would have to agree with you. I don't think that I missed years, um, missed the years that I was estranged from my mom. Um, I have to say though, I think that part of that was because there really was not a lot of, and I think for you and I, we were all a bit older when these estrangements occurred, and so there wasn't, there weren't big life events that were happening for either one of us. So a marriage, the birth of a baby, et cetera, et cetera. And so I don't feel that I missed out on anything. I feel like it was necessary,
Mm-hmm.
that I had to do it to get some space and figure some things out. The longest estrangement I had was several years with my mom, but it was over an entire family thing. And so it involved a lot of different players, etc. But I don't think that I missed that time away. My mom probably did. I know as a mother who was estranged, I missed the time that I was with my daughters, but also that I was away from my daughters. But also at that point in time, I think the missing was more profound because they were younger. So, in other words, I missed my second daughter's college graduation because we were estranged. And I missed my grandson's first birthday, one of my grandson's first birthday, because we were estranged. So, and those are moments, and I hear that often from parents because they get with, especially grandchildren and marriages and high school and college graduations, that these are once in a lifetime events that
Mm-hmm.
you can't get back. And I think that that's where a lot of the regret comes in, and missing on the parents' end. But I don't hear that so much from the children's end. So it sounds like you and I would agree with that from the estranged adult child's perspective. So yeah. Um, okay. Second question. Is it hard to reach out for that initial reconciliation contact after being apart or estranged? If so, how could an estranged parent make it easier while still honoring boundaries?
That's a tough one for me to answer because I was tempted to say, well, no, it was actually really easy because I was ready. But there was a lot of time when I wasn't ready. I mean, I had my mother's contact information in front of me for probably about a year before I actually picked up the phone and dialed her number. And it wasn't like I was sitting there with it in my hands, like, oh, is today the day? And
Mm-hmm,
struggling, but it was constantly on my mind, like, okay, this is going to have to happen.
mm-hmm,
And it's not going to be comfortable, but it has to happen. But when the day actually came, when I did pick up the phone, there really wasn't any thought or feeling involved with it. I just woke up that morning. I knew today was the day. And before dwelling on it too much, I just picked up the phone, dialed her number, and said, "Hi, mom, it's me." So the reaching out, I don't know. I think to be totally fair and honest, no, it wasn't difficult. The showing up, I think that's where the difficulty really presented itself, if that makes sense.
and when you say showing up, meaning at her, like face to face?
Yeah, face to face at her
Mm-hmm.
house. Now, can you repeat the second half of that question? It was something about how could the parents prepare, or
Right. How could, let me find it again. Sorry. How could an estranged parent make it easier while honoring boundaries? So if the adult child is like, I don't want you to reach out and contact me, call me, text me, email me, show up at the house, or any
well,
version
something
thereof.
that came up in the group that sometime in the last couple of weeks was somebody had made a suggestion of just sending out like a fairly generic card in
Mm-hmm.
the mail, just like a reminder that, hey, I exist, I'm available. If contact information has changed, this is a good opportunity to communicate that. I think anything beyond that, even something like that, if it's happening every 3 months, you are pushing a boundary. But if it's happening
Right.
once a year, let Hallmark say happy birthday, thinking about you, You don't even have to say love mom. You could just
Mm-hmm.
sign it mom
Mm-hmm.
or dad or whatever. But outside of just making sure that there's that very, very casual, no strings attached reminder that the door is open, I think you are pushing boundaries. Your kid knows that you're there. They know you exist. Presumably, you know, they know it's an option to reach out, and I would imagine, will reach out when and if they are ready.
I agree. Let me ask you this, and only because it's been asked by multiple clients and folks in the support group, et cetera, for those parents who are working on themselves, who are in therapy, who are really attempting to make some personal changes and being able to now reflect more so on the estranged adult child's perspective, et cetera. Um, would that how could that parent potentially, if at all, let the estranged adult child be aware of their work?
Okay, this is a question I've spent a good deal of time pondering too, because this is a weird one. It's not like you can send your kid a bullet point list and say,
Mm-hmm.
this is all the things I've been working on.
Mm-hmm.
I think your actions kind of have to speak for themselves, right? Like if I think in terms of my own personal experience, my mom's habit in years past used to be that she would send these long letters, like 8 9 pages,
Mm-hmm.
explaining all the things that she saw to be wrong with the situation. Not like 9 pages of finger pointing, but 9 pages of what she
Mm-hmm.
believed to be productive dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
I would get this big fat envelope in the mail and I wouldn't even read it. I would toss it straight into the fire pit. That would be the end of that. Now, with this last round of estrangement, I was fully expecting to get these fat envelopes in the mail, and I was expecting to get angry about it, and I was expecting to throw them in the fire pit, but there was no envelopes that showed up.
Mm-hmm.
The absence of that fat envelope ever showing up, I mean, while it hurt and while it was unexpected, when somebody finally came to me and said, you know what, your mother has been going through some changes, I didn't really struggle so much to believe that, because something as subtle as that envelope not showing up in the mail told me that something had changed.
Right.
But don't undersell your kid's ability to perceive things.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably not blind. If they're receptive to whatever you're doing, they have noticed things that you don't think that are there to notice.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not receptive, no amount of work on your part is going to matter anyways. So just keep doing it for you. Don't do it for them. Do it for you.
I could not agree more. I absolutely could not agree more. And um, that is what when I talk with adult kids who are perhaps questioning, should I reconcile, should I not? Oftentimes it's that. They're like, well, I haven't heard from my mom in a year and a half. And that's really not like her. Like I wonder if something's changed, right? It just starts that curiosity on their end to consider things. Again, your child knows you're there. I mean, they're not going to forget that they have a mother or a father. They know that. And when they're ready, generally there's something somewhere along the way, whether it's a conversation they have with someone over dinner, a family member who comes into town and is visiting, and they have dinner and they're like, wow, I saw your mom 6 months ago, and man, she's just a completely different person anymore, right? And it just sparks that, well, I wonder what this is all about. And then if they're ready, then generally they'll reach out on some level. But also too, as we've talked about before, when you're reaching out, as your mother did with the letters, pack big fat envelope time after time, when you're chasing after them, you're just pushing them further and further away. So they will reach out. The most difficult and near impossible task for parents is to sit back and do nothing. because they've had a lifetime with children, managing them, managing every aspect of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're not in touch. And to sit back and do nothing and be patient on top of that is just like you're asking them to do the impossible. And I think that that's where these questions come in, is how can we let them know that we're working on this and that and the other thing. So um and sometimes you just
There's
have to give it up. You just have not that you're giving up on reconciliation, but you have to give up the control,
yeah,
right?
there's one exception that's sort of springing to mind just because I'm faced with it fairly frequently these days. And it might, I think this is probably like an age group specific thing, or maybe it's related to health as well.
Okay.
But with my mom being in her 80s now and her health being poor, she's, well, all of us around her are painfully aware of the fact that there are a few days ahead and many days behind,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I've still got siblings that are estranged from our mother, I can see from their perspective, having been in that position, you just assume that mom is out, or you don't assume, mom is there. you
Mm-hmm.
know you figure you can just get to her whenever because mom is a constant in our lives. But
Mm-hmm.
what I realized, like through reconciling with my mom, when I showed up at her door that first time, just seeing how much she had aged over the course of 6 years, I'm like, holy crap, who is this old lady where mom used to be?
Mm-hmm.
It's been longer than that for my younger sister and my older brother. Like my older brother hasn't seen her since the 90s. He
Mm-hmm.
may assume that she's always going to be there. He may be remembering this young, strong, annoying woman,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
thinking that, you know what, there's plenty of time to get back to her. There isn't. There really
Right.
isn't. With some of the issues that are going on right now, I could get a phone call tomorrow morning saying, you know what, she's gone. I have to be comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it, but I have to be comfortable with that. My siblings, meanwhile, I think while they're engaged in their new normal that doesn't involve her, they may be blissfully unaware of the fact that this once strong, dominating, aggravating pain in the ass is now a feeble old lady who very, very much just wants to love her kids before she's gone. So for any feeble little old ladies or little old men that want to love their kids before they're gone, I think there does come a time where your need does trump your children's needs to assert boundaries. And in cases like that, what the hell do you have to lose from just being
Mm-hmm.
a little bit pushier than they would like? I'm not saying that you can expect wonderful things. You may be most likely to get a slap in the face in return. If you're prepared for that slap in the face, though, what the hell do you have to lose? Your kids aren't talking to you anyways. You know, I've often said that an aging parent, I mean, their fragility from a kid's point of view, that can't be a motivator in reaching out. Like I would never want to go and try to reconcile with somebody who's done no work just because they might die. Because what am I reconnecting with? Nothing.
Right.
The other side of that equation, though, I'm learning, like, just because my mom confides in me, it's a very, very different scenario. She knows she's done the work. She knows she's a different person. She doesn't have the luxury of time to wait for that information to slowly seep down to my siblings level. So I have reached out on her behalf. I have encouraged my mom, you know what, it's my sister's birthday's coming up, why not send her a card? Just remind her that you love her. Don't come on strong like a garlic milkshake.
Right.
One or two sentences.
Mm-hmm.
But I think every parent is aware of their situation with their kids, hopefully. Just keep it short. If they don't seem to notice, there's nothing wrong with a subtle reminder if you feel like you're running out of time. Anyways, I'm going to shut up about that now. I think I made my point.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think that, you know, I don't think I know. I've got clients who who are aging. They're in their 70s and 80s, and they understand that they're on borrowed time, so to speak. Um, but their kids don't. I've had one that has reached out and said, we were involved in a car accident last weekend, and what would have when we came within inches of it being really, really, really bad situation. And what would our adult child feel like if we've had no communication for the last year, and then they got a phone call that said that's off the table anymore,
Yeah.
right? They're gone. So it's something that every parent thinks about, and I don't think I don't believe that the kids don't ever think about it. I do think though that the kids think it's far off into the future. It's not as up close and personal and near as it is for the parent. So yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay. So on to the next question. Why would I continue to try and bridge the gap and reach out only to be berated by my estranged adult child who is who has berated me and has a very unkind wife? I have been over backwards, so has my husband and their siblings, as well as the rest of our extended family. It's exhausting, and I'm losing who I am. It's constantly walking on eggshells. The main reason now that we're still trying is because we have a young grandchild, but now they're not even allowing us to FaceTime with that grandchild. The whole scenario is just unbelievable to me. It's heartbreaking. The only thing that has caused a rift in this family is our estranged son's wife.
I want to start off by saying that nobody is obligated to subject themselves to abuse ever.
Right.
Okay. I don't think that having a grandchild in the mix changes that. And I also don't think that everything could be placed on the daughter in law's shoulders, because I know that if my wife was interfering with my relationship with my mother, I'm not obligated to follow my wife's lead, and I'm not obligated to put up with that crap. I have the opportunity to say to my wife, you know what? You're in the wrong. Back off.
Mm-hmm.
You do not talk to my mother like that. I've got the opportunity to talk to my mom and say, hey, stop antagonizing my wife, or you're going to lose both of us. I've got the opportunity to like have a conversation with both of them and say, hey, I love both of you and you're pulling me in separate directions, and I want to have both of you in my life. There's a lot of different ways in which the son could grow a pair and deal with the situation and fix his family. If he's not doing that, that's not his wife's fault. That's on him. That's my opinion. So, as much as I think it sucks that you miss your grandchild, I don't think that you should let them weaponize that grandchild against your emotional well-being. You're going to have to figure out how to pack up your hurt pieces, make a tactical retreat, patch yourself up, figure out like what you need to do to manage you, and trust that they'll take the same amount of time to figure out how to manage themselves. And then ideally, when the opportunity comes for you all to reconnect, you can reconnect as a healthy family instead of continuing this unnecessary war.
Very good. Yes. I also am in agreement that when it comes to in-laws, I know that it's really easy. It's really easy to blame an in-law for all the problems. However, however, your child plays a part in this. Where, why are they not able to stand up for themselves? I have yet to hear of an estranged adult child who was strong in who they were, knew who they were, was outspoken, could have difficult conversations, etc., and then marry someone and become the complete opposite. I've never heard of that happening. That somewhere along the way, this adult child, has not known who they were, has not known how to stand up and have difficult conversations, has not been able to face come face to face with conflict, right? Um, and so my question is always, where did they learn to give their power over to this wife, to this husband, whatever the case may be, right?
Mm.
I that's always the first question I have. Anytime I ever hear about, it's all the daughter-in-law's fault, it's all the son-in-law's fault. And I'm like, I don't subscribe to that. I'm like, where did things go so off track with your child that they've allowed this person to just come in and mow over things? It's a
Also, what might
variety
the
of
child
things.
be saying to their spouse about you,
Hmm.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. So there's all sorts of things that are happening, either have happened or are happening behind the scenes that we as parents aren't necessarily aware of, right? So that's my take on that. I just don't I think if that anything like that is happening where somebody really knows who they are and they're allowing someone else to mow over them, there is something else going on that
Yeah.
nobody else is aware of. Um,
No, that's a great insight.
I think the grandkids, you're right. I mean, by and large, that was the most difficult part of my estrangement, was not being allowed to see my grandchildren. It was awful. And I recognize that for parents. However, I had to keep reminding myself those were not my children.
Mm.
They're not your children. They have parents. And as grandparents, outside of abuse going on, and I know that a lot of parents will tell me this is abuse when they won't let a perfectly happy, healthy grandparent come into the picture. And my question then is always, well, are we really talking about happy and healthy and good, like relationships here? Probably not. So, but that's another piece to this. Your grandchildren are your child's child. They get to raise that child. You've had your opportunity at raising your children. And so, as difficult as it is, that you have to step back from that. And if they don't want you in that child's life now, forever, I don't know. Unfortunately, that's where it is. It doesn't mean there aren't things that you can do on the other side, meaning I suggest oftentimes to clients, keeping a box of letters that you write to your grandchild, et cetera. And maybe one day when they turn 18, 21, 25, whatever, and they come looking for you, you can hand them this box and say that they were thought of and loved the entire time, right? But what you're having problems letting go of is that control, from my perspective. Letting go of the control that I need to have this and that and the other thing done. I need to have this grandchild in my life. I think this grandchild needs me in their life. I think I deserve, etc. So I invite you know, something to noodle over when it comes
No,
to that.
and I have to say, like, think hearing what you're saying about, like, from the grandmother's perspective, what's going through your mind. I started thinking right away, like when I was estranged from my mom, having two kids myself. I I, I was getting it from both ends because through the grapevine, I was hearing these messages. Well, I'd like to see my grandsons.
Mm-hmm.
I was hearing it from my kids too. Like, why can't we go see Nana? And I'm well, actually hearing it from three sides, really, because my wife was saying too, like, what do you want to do here?
Mm-hmm.
And I really had to spend a lot of time mulling things over and weighing, okay, do I want to subject my kids to the kind of influence that made me so effed up in the head?
Mm-hmm.
And I eventually made a decision towards a certain course of action. But I mean, I did spend some time thinking about it. So if your kid has made that same taken that same time to engage in that thought process and determined that, you know what, I'm not willing to risk my kids. I mean, I think parents to parents, you kind of have to respect that. Like, look, I may not agree with their assessment of the threat, but as a parent, you also made assessments of threats that people didn't agree with when your kids were small
Right.
too. And you wouldn't have wanted anybody getting in your face saying, hey, you know what, you're not able or qualified to make these decisions for the safety of your kids. We're going to need you to step to the side. That's a
Hmm.
garbage move.
Right.
So just do your kids a solid, show them the respect that you would have expected.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that because that's a surefire way of getting heckles up for most people is just come in and start telling them what they need to do or not do with their children, with their own children.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So I agree with that. Okay. Um, and I agree before we move on to the next question. I also agree with I tell parents all the time, you do not have to tolerate being abused. You don't. You can put up some boundaries and say, here's the line, dude. Right here's the line. And if you cross that line, then here's what's going to happen. Right? Just as same thing applies to the adult children. I don't same thing, exact same thing applies to them. They don't have to put up with abuse, neither do you. So
And
if
the intent of the abuser is irrelevant too. If you are feeling endangered, walk away.
correct. Correct. Exactly. All right. Now the next question and last question for today's episode.
We're actually going to
Is
make
it
it through the whole list.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
High five.
Right? Okay. Here is the last question. Is it possible to give my parents a promotion? So far, I have stopped telling them about things that they might try to manage. So, managing in her life. But they have more life experience and I want to access their wisdom. How do I ask? How do I ask about it without setting them off with worry? Thank you, a reconciled but not close daughter.
This might seem a little obvious, but why not just ask your parents the same way you asked us? Like in
Mm,
those exact words.
hmm.
Like maybe that's not a lengthy answer, but I think that's the one I'm giving.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I think it's valid. And yes, I think, that's you're laying out what you're asking for, and you're also laying out what you're not asking for, right? I don't want you to worry. This is my life, but I want to tap into some of your life experiences. Can we have a conversation around that? Like maybe invite that first before you start going into all the things, right? And see
Yeah,
where
you're
they're
not
at.
dictating
Maybe,
terms. You're saying let's hash it out as a family.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, your parents are going to worry. I don't know of a parent on the face of the planet, estranged or otherwise, that doesn't worry.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
exactly.
just a part of who we are and what we do.
Mm-hmm.
However, and what they're worrying about, what is happening for them, how they are responding to this is their stuff, not yours, right? So you hold your line on what you're open to and what you're not open to. Let them know that. Don't assume that they know that because they probably don't. But how they respond to it is up to them, right? But you can tell them, I don't, if you worry about this, don't come back. I can't carry that and this, right? The answer or response, whatever that is, I need you to take that and do with that what you will and keep that over here. But where I'm at right here, this is what I'm asking for and this is what I need. But yeah, I think that that's a great starting point. I mean, what would be the concern or issue with not asking it from that as it was
You know,
asked about?
when I look at this from a parent's perspective, I think like the thing that worries me the most is not knowing what exactly it is my kids need. I
Hmm.
mean, because I mean, one is an adult, the other one, well, is going to be an adult soon enough. So I mean, I'm not dealing with like children. It's like, oh my god, are they okay on the playground? It's the case of
Right.
what's going on in your life. I do concern myself with these things because these are people that matter, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to play as much of a supporting role as I can. I want to back their play every step of the way if I can, but I can't do that when I'm completely in the dark. So if one of them comes to me and says, Dad, I need XYZ, what I don't need is, such and such, as frustrating as it can be to be cut off from certain types of input, I'd rather be frustrated and helpful
Mm-hmm.
than worried and useless.
Right. Agreed. Agreed. Beautiful. And what a great way to end today's episode. Thanks.
Compared to last episode, I feel like this one just flowed. See, like I knew we could do it.
Yes, we could
Maybe
do
the
it.
secret is just have me on flu meds every time and I'll learn to shut up.
Oh my gosh, I hope you're feeling better sooner rather than later. And thank you for today. And on that note, we will end today's episode. Thanks again, everyone. If you have questions for myself and or AC, please email those to theestrangedheart@gmail.com. And we're happy to answer them on the show. Thanks so much. Thanks, AC.
Thank you, Creed.
This brings this episode to a close. I hope that this time together was time you feel well spent and that you are able to find some takeaway nuggets to help you on your journey, wherever you may be on your estrangement and reconciliation path. If you feel you've received something helpful or positive from this podcast, please consider following us, sharing this podcast with others, leaving a positive review, perhaps entertaining becoming a guest on our show, or following us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok under the same name, The Estranged Heart. As a reminder, there is an online support group on Facebook. If you are a estranged mom who identifies as being spiritual and approaches estrangement with a sense of curiosity rather than blame and judgment, and desire to do inner self-work and reflection, please seek us out. We can be found at facebook.com/estranged mothers support group. And lastly, if you are an estranged parent or an estranged adult child and would like to have your story shared on the podcast, anonymously or not, please reach out to me via email at theestrangedheart@gmail.com.